Okay, so one of the big debates about this episode of Naruto Shippuden is people are criticizing the fact that it seems as though Sasuke has been nerfed. The fact that when he was fighting against Fuushin in this episode, Fuushin was actually giving him a run for his money. He pulled out the Susanoo. He had to, get rid of the Susanoo and jump into the Eye of the Storm. And people are saying, what's going on with Sasuke? This is one of the same people that helped to save the world from the Jubi, Madara Uchiha, Kaguya Otsutsuki. How is it possible that this guy is even having a slither of a problem with somebody like Fuushin that is just kind of like, hey, he has a cool Kekkei Genkai, but he really shouldn't have been troubled by it. Personally, I could definitely see where the complaint is coming from, because at the end of the day, when he had Susanoo, that shit should have went straight through that storm and hit Fuushin. I definitely can see that. It does seem as though they were trying to make it a little bit even. I will argue in a small degree the fact that the Kekkei Genkai is a little bit unique. And you can pretty much find things like this in any series where you have really, really strong characters. How do you have some sort of conflict where it's actually legit and not just the fact that, the OP guy is just swatting everything like a fly? Well, you make some creative abilities that'll actually give him in trouble. The fact that is like, oh, I can't just automatically smack him down. There's actually a little bit of uniqueness to it and a little bit of creativity, so it's not so easy to take him down. But still, I definitely see when I was watching this episode, I was like, Susanoo ain't taking this dude down? Really? Like, what the fuck? Like, also, debate that I've seen as well about this episode is the fact that Sasuke started bleeding from his eye, which he shouldn't be doing that because he already got the transfer for getting Itachi's eye, so he shouldn't be bleeding. Again, that's something that I don't really know. I mean, Sasuke's bled a while, but it was explained, if I'm not mistaken, the reason why he's doing that was back before he got the transplant from getting, Itachi's eyes, that he needed, perfect EMS, but he didn't have it at that point. Now he does, because he got the transfer getting Itachi's real eyes or whatever, so he shouldn't be bleeding. So yeah, that's kind of, Although, to be fair, I do think there were instances, if I'm not mistaken, maybe I'm wrong, but I do believe that actually happened a couple times in the fight in the war as well, against like Kaguya and Madara. Maybe I'm mistaken, but maybe it's just like a plot hole. The episode as a whole, to be honest with you, is what I kind of feared in a way. I mean, it was pretty enjoyable. I will say that. I'll say the backstory with Chino and Fuushin was pretty sad, seeing what happened to them, but it definitely felt as though it was diving into a typical Naruto filler arc. Like, you got something sad, music is pretty sad, and, the backstory is like, oh, I feel for the character, but ultimately it just genuinely felt like I was watching a filler episode of Naruto, even though it's an adaptation of a novel, which is essentially somewhat arguably canon or whatever. Ultimately, it kind of felt like filler. So that was my disappointment with this episode in particular. I mean, the beginning scenes with Sasuke versus Fuushin was pretty legit, but a majority of the episode was covered by seeing Chino's backstory with Fuushin, which, again, it was alright, but honestly, the best things about this arc with the first two episodes at the very least is it felt like, okay, this shit should have been in the actual manga. It's focusing on the characters we care about, the main cast. You see Naruto in the beginning, you see Kakashi, Sakura, Hinata. Second episode, you're getting Sasuke, Orochimaru, the Taka, like you're getting all the characters that we give a shit about. This episode and the last episode kind of started that way, which, like, I noticed the pattern. It was like, first episode was pretty dope, second episode was awesome, third episode was okay, and this episode is like, okay. It's like, it seems as though the closer we get to ending this arc is like, yeah, we gotta deal with actually the plot of this little mini arc with, Fuushin and Chino and their old clan and stuff like that, or Chino's old clan, and it's like, it's not as interesting as characters that we know, because essentially it's just all contained within this one arc. If there was an overall arcing story and it connected somehow to the universe of Naruto or things about our characters, then it would be more interesting. Like when you had that line, I think it was either the last episode or the episode before that, why didn't Itachi mention what the Uchiha did to this clan? It was like, okay, that's great, because it connects to the characters we care about. It connects to the lore of things we know. This episode, it kind of like, even though it was still addressing the Uchiha and what they did, it was like, okay, that was information we already got in the last episode. It's not anything new, and that's where I felt with this episode. It just kind of failed in a way, in a sense of it kind of just went into its own territory of telling the story, and it wasn't anything we've never seen before. I mean, it's interesting in a way of looking at Sasuke as a character. I would say that was one of the most interesting things I got of seeing this backstory and seeing what Sasuke had to say or whatever, because he was kind of feeling what we would see like if this was a filler episode with Naruto being the main character, because this is kind of how Naruto would look at it. He would kind of connect to these characters and understand their situation because he was alone as well. We never really got that from Sasuke, because Sasuke's always been like, oh yes, I am quiet, I am cool, man, I am so cool, son of a bitch. But we actually got to see him kind of taking that role and see how he would handle things from the perspective of what Naruto would normally handle, and he kind of could understand him as well. And I think seeing that pain and understanding that he could help out, it kind of helped bond him more to the fact that, yeah, I'm a hidden leaf shinobi now, you know, I'm a good guy, so to speak. And that's where I felt as though my interest lied with this particular episode. The beginning was pretty dope, Sasuke versus Fuushin. Arguably, I think Sasuke should have fucked him up regardless of any Kekkei Genkai. The story with Chino, it was alright. I think, again, Sasuke's reaction before and kind of just understanding Chino was pretty dope. The best parts of the flashback itself was, of course, like the cool shit when Chino was like bleeding from her eyes and looking insane. Like, that was pretty much the cool shit from the flashback that I enjoyed. Seeing the evolution of her Kekkei Genkai from, you know, the blood coming down to ultimately her being able to do that fucking zombie explosion shit that she can do to people. That's kind of interesting, and I think if she does throw down with Sasuke in the next episode, that's going to be interesting to see how he, you know, combats that, because essentially one touch and the motherfucker's gonna end up Sasuke, which we know that's not gonna happen. Obviously, Boruto, hello. And also, I want to throw in art and animation, because you cannot forget that. I mean, it still is holding up very well. Like, you can tell they use the same budget pretty much for every episode of this arc. It looks really awesome. The art, even the animation when they're fighting, I'm like, yo, even the key visuals look fucking dope. So I gotta give props to the fact that at the very least, they're making this shit look pretty too. So even if the story fails, even if you don't give a shit, it's cool on the eyes. So I want to say 6.5 to a 7. It's still okay. It's still alright. It's good or whatever. But it was so much more interesting in the beginning of this arc, seeing, you know, how everything played out with the hidden leaf and Orochimaru and stuff like that. And as we slowly progressed, which is what I predicted into this arc, and finding out more about Chino and stuff, it was just kind of like, okay. Also, I'm kind of curious as to the origin and its relation, potentially, to the Sharingan and the Uchiha clan, because you see in the episode when Chino goes crazy or whatever, it starts bleeding, and it kind of even looks a little bit like a Sharingan. Do you think that potentially, even though I doubt it'll get explained, you think there's some sort of relation between the two clans? Maybe that's why they actually were brought in to bring them down, because they had like kind of similar to the Hyuga with the Uchiha, because again, it kind of was like very similar with the bleeding and everything. And also, maybe that's the reason why for visual effects they had Sasuke bleeding from his eye, because, oh yeah, Chino's going to do that later on, so it's kind of similar and the audience will think it's kind of cool. Also, you gotta think for a second to add into the argument regarding the strength of Fuushin. When Sasuke was trying to look into his mind and he went in there, he pretty much was having a problem. And then also when he was stuck in there, it was kind of hard for him to get out. He had to use his ability a couple times to break the Genjutsu. So you got to think that they're kind of strong in that regard, but still, I see where people are going with it, and I'm totally on board the fact that who the fuck is Fuushin? Like, bro, who are you? And also, what do you think happened on Death Valley? Do you think the hidden myths were responsible for the death of them, or they just died because, again, look at Death Valley, it looks like shit. Maybe they starved, or, you know, they couldn't provide anymore, so they died off. I mean, you see the involvement of the hidden myths, which a lot of the tragedies in the world, now that I think about it, of Naruto, was caused because of the hidden myths. What the fuck, hidden myths? Like, yo, Konoha, nuke these motherfuckers. I know Naruto won't do it, but yo, Danzo, slither out of the fucking grave and nuke the hidden mist. But I'm kind of curious what you guys think. For starters, the big debate that I see a lot of people talking about, do you feel as though they nerfed the shit out of Sasuke for that fight with Fuushin, when Fuushin, I mean, Sasuke, he's the fucking one of the heroes of the Hidden Leaf, of the shinobi world in general, taking out Kaguya, Jubi, Madara, Obito. Why is he struggling? Like, this motherfucker Fuushin, as a matter of fact, when everybody was wrapped up in the cocoons, he was in a cocoon too. There should be no trouble at all. So yeah, that's my complaint, and I'm kind of curious what you guys think. Do you think they nerfed him? Do you think it's BS? Or you think because his Kekkei Genkai was so interesting that it was able, I mean, it was just wind. I mean, how is this tornado wind able to keep up with a Susanoo? Like, come on, Susanoo's beast. Like, what are you doing right there? And what did you think about Chino's backstory? Did you enjoy it? I mean, again, it was alright, but it just felt like I was watching filler. And we know how the Naruto fandom feels about the overabundance of filler. And your overall thoughts of this episode? Do you feel as though the Sasuke arc kind of needs to wrap up? Like, at first, I was like, with the first 2 episodes again, I don't ever want this shit to end, or at the very least, let this shit go on for a couple months. When we got to that 3rd episode, I was thinking, maybe it could wrap up pretty soon. With this episode, I'm like, okay, let's get like 1 or 2 more episodes and we could be done with this, because it was more interesting when you're focusing again, and I gotta keep saying this, I've said it in a few reviews now, on the characters we care about. When you take that out of the equation, it's like, for that, just make some goddamn filler period. You know, I'm just saying. And of course, again, this is an adaptation of some novels and stuff like that, and the backstory was sad. It did get me, but it just felt like filler. Any overall thoughts of this? Again, I'm kind of curious. Do you feel as though this shit needs to wrap up soon, or are you still enjoying it? Do you think it needs to go on? But that's all I have for this one. Thanks for watching. Hope you enjoyed. If you liked anything I had to say or enjoyed the video, drop me a like. I'd greatly appreciate it. And if you want more from me, make sure to subscribe, follow me on Twitter, Instagram, and stalk my Facebook to get more when the video ends. I'm ForneverWorld, and as always, people, have an awesome day.